Welcome back, friend, to another episode of the Happy Whole You podcast. I am so glad that you are here. If you are a leader or a manager or somebody who is on a sports team, you are going to want to hear this episode. Today, my guest is Mathew Blades. And when organizations or individuals want to break free from dysfunction and dysfunctional cycles, he knows how to come in and help you shift your habits and help you build a winning team and winning team cultures. And Mathew is an award-winning broadcaster turned captivated keynote speaker, and he shares a startling new perspective on how teams can relate to themselves and each other to achieve the extraordinary together. So he draws on 27 years of broadcasting experience and hundreds of transformational interviews through his podcast, Learn from People Who Lived It. Blades helps leaders and teams renegotiate what work can look like. His approach has impacted organizations like IKEA, Hyundai, and Keller Williams, and he also earns praises from industry leaders, including Howard Stern. You guys, I'm excited for you to listen in on this conversation. I have a list of questions that I want to ask Mathew because he just knows his stuff and he is such a powerful speaker and actually interviewer. I was on his podcast, Learn from People Who Lived It, and it was such a great experience to be on that podcast. I hope you will go check out his podcast as well. Learn more from him there as well as what we're about to learn right now. So, all right, I'm just rambling. So let's get into it. All right, Mathew, thank you for joining me today on the Happy Whole You podcast.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the invite.
I'm excited to have you. I was just reading your introduction and sharing with the audience your podcast, and you're such a great interviewer. So, as I said to you earlier, I was like, oh man, I'm like interviewing the best interviewer today. So, I'm going to be on my best behavior. Maybe not, but I know you're down for that too. So,
Listen, I love an opportunity to be on the other side of the podcast. So this is perfect for me. So I'm really here for it.
oh, I love it. Okay. Well, if you could just jump in and just share a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your background and how you got to the place you're in today.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, give everybody the quickest version of that I can. I am now currently what I refer to as a transitional character, and before the people who are like, get rid of this hokey crap already, because we stop and we just talk like real people. I'll give you some context on that. So, before I can tell you who I am, I have to tell you who I was, or what I did before I stepped into this role that I'm in fully. Um, I was a radio and television personality for about 28 years and literally checked off every single box that I could have dreamed for my career, and had experiences and did things and made things and went places, and it was like it was unbelievably one of the most charmed careers I think somebody could possibly ask for. And what's cool about that is, and do I call you Anna or Anna Marie, by the way?
Anna Marie is good.
Okay, good. So what's cool about that, Anna Maria, is that when I was about 10 years old, I used to go down into my basement and I used to have this little 45 record and this little record player, and I would put it on the record player and I would pretend to be a radio guy. I would pretend to like give away, concert tickets and say hi to people and introduce records and all that stuff. And I mean, 15 years later, I'd literally checked off every box that I could have imagined at the age of 25. And something really interesting happened to me in my career because, when you dream as big as you can, and you have to keep in mind, like, I'm a blue collar kid from Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Growing up, everybody's an addict. Everybody's working at the labor. Everybody's got a military job. Like, we don't have a lot, and the people around me don't have a lot of things. And so I dreamed as big as I could as a kid that had that kind of an upbringing. And when I hit it all at 25, I was kind of like, "Phew, what am I going to
I
do
made it.
next?"
Yeah.
Yeah, like, now what?
Mhm.
And I did what I think so many of us do, which is I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm good at this. So like, let's just keep going. I'm just going to keep doing this. And That's exactly what happened, and I went on to, like I said, have a radio career that lasted 28 years. I got to be nationally syndicated a couple of times. I've interviewed presidents. I've talked to every celebrity that I can possibly imagine, and then some 3, 4 times over. I got to see things, do things, experience things, and all of that, Anna Marie, should have made somebody really, really happy. It should have made somebody really, really happy, and it did for a while. And then at about 2017, things started to nag on me a little bit, and it was very strange because in 2017, simultaneously, I signed the biggest contract of my entire life, and I locked myself into what should have been another 20 years of radio and television if I wanted to. And I was just so unhappy, dude. I was so unhappy, Anna Maria. Nothing made sense. My marriage didn't feel great. The relationship out of my kids didn't feel great. I didn't like going to work anymore. And then you know what happens next. I had all these physical manifestations
Yeah.
that started to
Body
pop
was
up.
Yeah, your body was telling you all along you need to make a change, but you still signed that contract anyways.
What are you gonna do? There's a lot of money. And so I pushed through like so many of us do. I just pushed right through. And then, July 12th of 2021, I got my 3rd and final panic attack, and, it scared the shit out of me. I went to the hospital. I thought I was dying, and because of so you need to know a little bit of a story that may come up a little bit later on in our podcast, but, I watched my dad die. He had a heart attack in front of me at when I was 23 years old, and I tried to save his life, and I couldn't. And so if you're to ask me what's the one thing that scares the shit out of me more than anything in the world, it's that I'm gonna have a heart attack, I'm gonna die in front of my kids like my dad did. Like he died in front of me and my brother. Um, so when I got that 3rd and final panic attack, I was like, "Oh my god, this is it." Like I was the exact same age that he was when he died. We were both 47 years old, which probably wasn't a mistake. And, I just sat in that hospital bed, and they came back in, and they said, "Every test is fine. You're physically good to go." And I was smart enough, Anna Marie, to know that in that moment, if it wasn't physical, then it was mental, or it was spiritual, or it was both. And so 5 days later, I walked away from my job and stepped into a rehab facility and just really went to work on myself for a solid time.
Wow.
I
That
know.
is so powerful, and the courage that that takes because, you know, when we're getting anxiety attacks, when we're Um, and it doesn't always start off that way, right? Like you start getting a little bit anxious, a little worried about things that you never used to worry about, having like, "Oh, I really don't want to go to work, or I really don't want to go to that next meeting. I'm not even looking forward to this interview when, 5, 10 years ago, you'd have been like anything to give that interview and to get that person in the chair across from you. And these are the little subtle signs that our body starts showing up to say, hey, you're not in alignment anymore. There's things that need to be changed. And when we keep pushing it back and not listening, then it goes to that full blown panic attack. And for some people, it's a panic attack. For some people, it's a depression. For some people, it is a heart attack. For some people, it is a stroke. And so I love that you said that you were smart enough to figure out, like, okay, this is, if it's not physical, it's mental. And you stepped into making that shift. So you go into rehab to work on yourself.
Mm.
And then what happens from there? You're in rehab. What's going through your mind? And then you step out of rehab. What comes next for you?
I was terrified that I was going to have to walk away from my career.
Mm,
I I I'd I'd for a long time been feeling like that wasn't for me anymore. But the problem was that it was what I knew how to do, and, I was good at it, and it paid well, and it afforded us a lifestyle that was very convenient, and, like, from the outside in, you would have thought it was absolutely pure perfection, and I feel like that resonates with so many people nowadays, especially those people who are like I was and, like, just trying to glue it all back together moment by moment during the
yeah.
day.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, it's like, I know, like, for me, I think we all have similar stories, right? It was like then there's the worry, and then there's the guilt, and then there's the shame, and the guilt comes of, "Oh, like, you have this great life, you should be happy where you're at. Why are you still not satisfied? And most people would kill to be in your position." And then it's like this weird emotional storm. I felt like when I went through something similar. And then it's like, I don't know, it's not really until you come out of it that you can see clearly, like, oh yeah, like there were changes needed a long time ago. But it's when you're in it. So like if we're talking to someone right now and they're like, oh my gosh, Matthew, I'm starting to feel that way. I've been in this career, checks all the boxes, but I feel paralyzed to even make a decision to make any changes. Like, what would you say to that person if they were right in front of you?
Probably the same thing that my one of my healers said to me, which is, no matter what you do it in the highest way. No matter what you do, this can't be collateral damage. No matter what you do, you can't tear your family's life apart. You can't tear your coworkers' lives apart. Like, you have to do this in the highest way. You have to make this change, but it can't be at the expense. And so, look, some people are in a situation right now where it's life and death and they need to leave. And you and I recognize that that's a separate group of people. But I think who we're talking about is folks that are in their career that maybe have a good job, have had a good job for a long time, and are starting to bubble up with some of these feelings of, what am I doing here? Like, what's the point of all of this stuff? And, there's a great book, and I don't know if you've ever read Michael Singer's books.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So, like, here's one of the greatest things that Michael says in all of his books is he thinks it should be mandatory for everybody to have a midlife awakening. It should be mandatory for every one of us to step into our 40s and 50s and literally get our hand over our heart and say, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, I know it was what I was supposed to be doing when I was in my 20s because that felt really good, and in my 30s, and that felt really good. But now, like, I'm 45, it's getting more and more clear that I'm on the back nine of this golf course and not the front nine. And
Yeah.
what do I want? What do I want this to look like? And how do I want this to feel? And I believe those are really good questions for us to ask ourselves. And so that's where I would start, right? Like the idea of, you need a shift, but you just need to make sure that you shift in the highest way, whatever that looks like for you. And so I can give you some examples. For example, when I knew that this was the shift that I was going to need to make, we did some downsizing in our life. So we did some things that made our life cheaper to operate, because I knew if I was going to make this move and walk away from the money that I was going to need, like, I couldn't stay where we were and keep
Yeah.
going for very long. I would have been dead in the water, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so we did some things like that, right? Got rid of nice cars, got some used cars that were still in pretty good shape. We weren't able to save for retirement anymore. So we did some things that looked different on paper. But then the biggest thing that I did, Anna Marie, was I went to work on this mental and spiritual side of myself that had been, if I'm totally honest with you, derailed probably since I was 6 years old. Um, Probably again at 9 years old, again at 12 years old, probably again at 16, probably again at 23. And now I'm getting into, your line of work, and why I just know that the people who get a chance to work with you are so lucky. It's because we have these moments that hit us on the way up.
Mhm.
And my famous expression is, nobody's in therapy because they got too many hugs. So you can grow up in a really great family, and you can grow up with a lot of love and hugs and attention. And there can also be some really traumatic things that take place in that same home. And it's those moments that wire us in a way that when we get to be adults, I believe it's our responsibility as that transitional character to look at the way we're operating, to look at the system that's operating us now, and making sure that it's as up to date as it can possibly be. Because I know for myself, and I don't know about you, maybe you could speak to it if you're open to it, but it's like I had a little kid running the show inside of me in a lot of ways and in a lot of circumstances, not in every area of my life,
Mhm.
but enough. And I think if I'm honest with you and the people that are listening, definitely in the areas that mattered the most, like that truly matter, the relationship that I have with my kids, the relationship that I have with my wife, with my friends, with my, my mom, my brother, my sister. How am I for them? And I just didn't like what I saw anymore. And so I hope that answers your question, which is to say, get curious about how you can operate your life and get curious about how you can upgrade your operating system.
Yeah, yeah. I love that, and I think it's remembering to leverage where you're at too, and you don't have to do it all in one big jump, you know,
Good advice.
a little
Good.
bit.
You don't have to do the Mathew Blades special. That was like looking back at it, there was no other way it was going to go down, Anna Marie, but it was still a little crazy the way that
Yeah,
I mean, I left right in the middle of my contract, I had a year left on my deal. I mean, my wife and kids were supportive, but at the same time, they had to been going, "What is
yeah.
this guy doing?"
Yeah, but I mean, at least you guys made some of those financial changes
Sure.
first, right? So you were leveraging where you were at and making a few of those changes and, I mean, transition is hard no matter what, It's I remember once I had a boss who, told me there was a lady that was gonna be leaving, and I had worked with her for a couple of years, and then towards the end when she was leaving, things got a little yucky and messy, and I
Mhm.
remember he's like, "Yeah, most people have a hard time leaving without creating an issue before they go." And that always stuck with me, and I always thought, "Why?" And then it's like, is it so because they kinda don't part of them doesn't wanna leave, or a part of them like, transition's hard, so if you make some things a little bit rough, it makes it easier to step away and not be as emotionally vulnerable of, like, "I'm really actually sad to leave." I don't know, that always just stuck with me, and, of course, whatever we put in the forefront of our mind, then we see it more often, and so then since then, I've seen it happen, quite a few times, and I've always found that very interesting, so
It's so fascinating that you say that because my whole life I have said this about relationships. I've been like, there's two types of people. There's people that can just disengage because they recognize that the relationship isn't working and it's not what either one needs, and it's not that you're an asshole, you suck, or any of these
yeah,
things. And then there's the other people that are like, no, there needs to be a reason, and so I'm gonna like stir it up and I'm gonna create chaos or whatever,
yeah,
and then the relationship dissolves because now they have something to blame it on.
yeah, it's so true,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
very
it's
true,
funny.
it's interesting. Okay,
Okay,
you talk about the, transitional character.
yeah.
What does that mean? What
Okay.
is that?
So I'll give you a little context. I was in day 4 of my retreat, where I went to this mental and spiritual rehab retreat center, call it what you want. And about 4 days in, I was talking to the same guy over and over again for those 4 days. And he just stopped and he got this look on his face and he looked right at me, Anna Maria, and he was like, I think you're a transitional character in your lineage. And I said,
Whoa.
what does that mean?
Yeah.
And he goes on and he says, well, the transitional character is usually this person who, growing up, life doesn't feel like it makes sense around them. And they just feel this tug that they're going to be a little different. And then when they get older, they see things that they go, this doesn't make any sense. And we need to change the way that we do things around here because I'll be damned if everybody that comes after me with my last name it doesn't start to sort out the chaos that has existed in my family's lineage for generations. Not
Mhm.
crazy terrible things, but generational cycles of abuse and addiction and poverty, if you will, or lack of growth mindset, right? Like there's things that have happened along the way. Um, and so I kind of lost my train of thought on this. If you want to jump in on this part of it, but that the idea is that the transitional character is somebody who's here to end dysfunction for themselves and
Mhm.
everybody around them. That's the simplest definition of it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like that, that make I can relate. Like
Do you? How do you relate?
because it's like stopping that cycle. And
Yeah.
I think for me, it's like growing up, I thought, well, this is just normal and this is just the way things are. And then now I'm realizing, okay, that could have been, yes, normal. for you and for other people, but it doesn't need to be the way that things are. And you can make that change and you can make that shift. And so, but it started for me, it started with me. And then I'm instilling that on my children, which is like the best, like literally the best. Um, but yeah, I think because I've always known since I was little, like I was meant to do something very extraordinary, not just I grew up in a town of less than 10,000 people. There's one high school in the town, K through 12, everybody knows each other. And hey, there's nothing wrong with that. And you just go, you live there and you go to school and then you have kids there and then your kids go to school and it's just like. But for some reason I knew I was going somewhere and doing something.
It's so great.
So
Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, when I was 12 years old, I remember looking around my house and literally going, "What the hell is going on?"
Mhm.
Like, dad's drunk, mom's screaming all the time, we have no money, it just feels like total chaos. Now we're moving, now we're going to a new city, I'm starting junior high at a new school, like, I just was like, "What is this?"
Mm.
And then, because the universe is so freaking cool, it did something so amazing for me, right? It put me in this new town with these new people, and I befriended this group of folks, and their parents had so much money. It's they were so wealthy. It was out of control. These amazing houses, and a kid growing up like me from Coon Rapids, Minnesota, like I shared a room with my brother my entire life, right?
Yeah.
Um, and now I'm like, I'm with these friends, and like one of them's got a motocross track in his backyard. The other's got like indoor swimming pools and basketball courts.
Oh
And it was
gosh.
yeah, this crazy shit, right? And the reason that I love that that happened for me so much was because I got to see what was really possible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and in that in those friendships, those seeds were planted for me of like, what are we gonna do? Kind of licking your chops and going, what are we gonna do? But to get us back to the transitional character, just briefly, the reason that I'm so passionate about the idea of that is because here's how I feel about it. If that resonates with you, that thought that you're a transitional character resonates with you, and you know that you're the person here to end dysfunction, break cycles, and make sure that the people who come after you with the same last name, life makes a little bit more sense for them or it's a little bit easier, well, then get to work
Mhm.
and start doing the things that you need to do every single day to make your life make more sense. And here's what I mean by that very specifically. I don't like the idea of self-care because everybody's talking about it right now and it's become a little bit too foo-foo.
Mhm.
When you ask me what when I mean when I talk about self-care, it's like who are those people that you need to have very difficult conversations with right now? Who are those relationships that you know you need to repair or walk out on right now? Is there elements of humor that has completely disappeared from your life that you need to bring back? Not just the ability to laugh at other things, but the ability to just laugh at the shit that's going on in your own life and laugh it off and stop taking it so seriously. And then who are these people that you really need to forgive? What is the thing that you're hanging on to right now that is literally making it so slow for you to move? So the reason I love the idea of the transitional characters because if you're that person, then get to this other stuff.
Mhm.
Start working on yourself. Start really looking at the way you're programmed and the way you're operating your life right now. Start to get super curious about the relationships that you have, the career you have, the friendships you have, where you're headed spiritually. Like just start to get really curious about those things because it's my experience that once you start to drop into self and kind of get curious about those things start showing up.
Yeah.
That you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you had this experience too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, just a few years ago when I walked away from an 18-year career, and I didn't
Oh, really?
how the hell or what the heck or okay, I think I know what I'm gonna do, but it's scary as all get up. And then, oh yeah, the universe just life just showed up for me. I had exactly what I needed in those moments. Uh,
Mm,
I actually just had a client who I was coaching with earlier, and there has been like this 6-month issue within their organization and a couple people within the organization. And the conversation has been around, until there's a transition in there, like, we can't new energy can't flow in until we get
Amen.
rid of the stuff that is holding us down and pulling us down. And anyways, this earlier, this client, like the things that they wanted, the people they've been trying to land as new clients, all of it came all in over the last 4 weeks, because 4 weeks ago, the old stuff, they finally let it go. And it was like, of course, but that's I think what happens, like, all those questions that you were saying to, like, get curious about and ask yourself and step into and get to work. The moment we start doing that is the moment that these things start showing up for us, because now we're stepping into something that's possible and we're putting it again at the forefront of the mind. And then, we don't have to know, I think, um, how we're gonna do it all, but we need to start taking those steps in the direction. And I think with every step, there's another step that'll be, illuminated for us, which brings me into my next question for you. You were in, interviewing people, TV, radio, all of this, and you said that, "Is this gonna be the end of it?" Like, I don't know, like, you knew you needed a transition, you went and had some, rehab, spiritual awakening, and then you come out of that, and what are you doing with your life? Like, what did everything just crumble and break? I mean, because you seem like you're doing alright. Like, what are you doing now? What's happening for you now?
Well, as you can see if you're watching or listening to this, I haven't gotten very far away from a microphone in front of my face. Um, I still podcast every single day. I've got a couple of podcasts that I run, Learn from People Who Lived It is my favorite one. And then I've got another YouTube community series that I do here in my local community of Phoenix, Arizona. That's just a little bit more about meeting my neighbors and talking to them, which is a lot of fun. I'm also, I have I have my hands in so many interesting things now. Like, I told the world I was tired of one thing, and it said, "Fine, here's 20 things," right? And so, every day for me is really different, and it's taken me a minute to get used to that, Anna Marie. It's taken me a minute to get used to, wait, Monday is this, Tuesday is this,
Yes.
Wednesday is this, you know?
Yeah.
I don't do the same thing every day. When you and I hang up, I'm going to be doing what some might consider my day job now, which is I coach other podcast hosts on how to be more effective communicators, and I basically teach them all the skills that I learned for the last 28 years on the radio and television. So it's not uncommon for me to be on a podcast or have somebody on my podcast, and then it's like, hey, we should work together because I feel like I could learn something from you. So I'll do that. But then I'm also into youth athletes from the mental aspect of this thing. I always say to these young kids, there's two things that are really almost identical, and that's sports and entertainment. They're almost identical because of the demands that they place on the people that are involved with them. And if you've ever been in either, you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. We don't care how you feel. We care what the score is. We care what you end up doing. And so I love to work with, and I actually run a high school hockey organization here in Phoenix, Arizona. Yes, we have hockey in Arizona. Um, and I get a chance to work with youth athletes all the time. And so I'm going to be podcast coaching a doctor out of Lubbock, Texas, as soon as you and I are wrapped up today. And then I'm going to be coaching a 12-year-old golfer here in Phoenix who's trying to have a better mental attitude when he steps up to the tee. Next week, I'll be doing my prison work, which I've gotten into, where I go and I work at the juvenile inmates here at a local detention center. And so I'll spend 2 weeks in there working with the kids in classroom activities and just talking to them about the idea that maybe they're the transitional character and maybe it's time for them to step into that energy and do something different with their lineage. So I'm doing a lot of things, but they're all kind of my favorites, and it's tough for me to decide which is like the ultimate favorite, but they work really well together.
Yeah. So you just really your skills and all of your past set you up for what you're doing now.
It's so fair to say that. I think, look, like I said, I had a charmed career. I really believe that in every way, shape, or form. I learned so many incredible skills. I learned marketing, and I learned events, and I learned sales, and I learned promotions, and I learned, most importantly, how to talk to people. And that has served me so well. And I'll tell you a quick story that when my sons are about to be 19 and 16, and I watch them. I watch the way they are in front of their people, and I see the things that they've picked up along the way. And they too are those types of people, right? They're really effective communicators with their group of people. And I see where it's gotten them. It was at lunch today with a friend of mine, and I said, my boys are having a 180 experience in high school than I had. Like there's
Yeah.
not a single thread of commonality between the two. And I really attribute to that to their confidence and their ability to communicate with people, and I'd like to think that in some way, shape, or form, they were watching me a little bit growing up and
Yeah.
figuring out how to do those things, yeah.
What do you think is getting in the way of people having effective communication? Or maybe what is some strategies or some better ways to communicate that you see people are not doing?
Oh my gosh, you are about to open up one of my favorite cans of worms. I love this. No, I have this whole presentation that I do for companies called How to Talk to People You Don't Like Talking to, and I literally wrote a book called How to Talk to People You Don't Like Talking to, and
Oh
it's
my
like a
god. Can
little.
we do a whole nother podcast on that? I would love that.
We
Let's do
need to
it.
do it.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, but if you to answer your question, what's, like, the one thing I'd say there's 2 things that are getting in the way of people being effective communicators. Number 1 is God, how do I boil this down into 2? Number 1 is honesty. I think people have lost the ability to be truly honest about what they want to ask somebody or what they want somebody to know or how something's made them feel. And it usually comes out venomously. And so, honesty is the ability to say to a kid, for example, who doesn't show up for practice, right? And he only shows up for the games, and the coach gets pissed, and the coach wants to scream at him because, do you not know how important it is to be at practice? And what kind of an example are you setting for all the people, right? Like, I know all the things we want to say to him, but what I'm suggesting is in this moment, what if we approach the kid and we say, hey, man, here's the truth. When you're here, our team is better. When you're here, our locker room seems to laugh more. When you're on the ice, the kids just seem to work harder. When you're here, I don't think there's anybody that can beat our hockey team, but I just need you to be here.
Mm, so powerful.
That's that's honesty. That's what I'm talking about. Like, yes, the other stuff is true, but we've lost the ability to tell people what we really need them to know. And then I think the other thing, I don't think, I know the other piece of this is, oh man, it's gotta be, can it be a tie? It's gotta
Yes.
be a tie between tone and, your operating system. Like, I think
Oh, yeah.
if you're gonna argue, if every time the red flag goes up for you, you turn into a 16-year-old or a 12-year-old because of some past trauma or some past situation, that's a problem. And conversely, if you aren't aware of your tone and how you're delivering your messaging, that's a problem. And so I would say if you can figure out those 3 things right there, if you can master tone, honesty, and the other one, I believe that your conversations become more effective. And that's what I'm looking for, right? Like I always tell people, Anna Marie, if you want to scream at somebody, scream away. If they need to hear how you feel because you just need to blow up and barf, go crazy, but don't expect anything to be better after that moment.
Yeah.
Like, actually expect things to be worse after that moment. But if you're really here in the spirit of having an effective conversation with somebody, I think honesty is one of the things that you could do. And the question that I love to ask people, as I say, if we were to watch your life with no sound,
Mm.
what would we see? Like, really think about that question today. How do you operate your life? Are you are you do you have a look on your face that doesn't invite anything new in? Or are you walking around like, "Give it to me. What do you got? I'm wide open." I like that second part better.
Yeah, I love that. And when you said that to me, you know what came to me is like, oh man, I've been so busy that sometimes I wonder if people don't connect with me because they look at me and think, oh, she's too busy.
Mm.
And I actually 2 weeks ago, I went on my calendar and I marked off so many hours because I'm like, this summer, and just, like, felt like I was getting, like, burnt out. I'm like, "I'm just gonna, like, maybe see 2 clients a day, 1 podcast a week." Like, I'm gonna
Yes.
step back. But a part of that is because I got was getting so busy, and when you said that, I'm sitting here thinking, "Oh, man, how many people have I missed out opportunities because 'cause they're probably like, 'Oh, she's just too busy.'" When, like, I don't know, just trying to be honest with myself. But, when you said being honest, one thing I wonder is if it's hard for us to, like, share with someone. If I'm being honest with you, like, how it
Mm.
becomes better when you're here and all that, and it was just so beautiful how you said that. Do you think it's hard for people because, like, they're not honest with themselves or no one's really been that honest with them? So it's like not in our vocabulary, or it's like it doesn't roll off the tongue as easily because
Right.
we're so emotionally driven that we're going by our emotions, but not by what we truly want. Because I think our emotions and what we truly want, there's like a wonky disconnect there sometimes, It's like you want the
So
kid
true.
there, but you're so pissed off, but you don't wanna be so pissed off that the kid doesn't wanna come back because obviously
Right.
him being there is the best. So I don't know, I think it's I love having these conversations because it's like self-reflection and dissecting is so great.
Yeah, well, maybe honesty's a muscle.
Yeah, I like that.
Maybe honesty's a muscle, and it's just something that we need to train, and we need to figure out how to do it. But the critical part of that is then who are you? Like,
Mm,
you got to know that, and you have to know how you feel about a situation, and not just how you feel about it. So let me give you a quick example. Well, there's lots of practices that offer something like this, but in Buddhism, there's this thing called Mahamadra, where it's like you step outside yourself and you look at yourself looking at yourself. So you're like twice removed, right? I know it sounds
I
spiritual, but
literally
just
yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
it's out there.
Yeah.
So if we jumped outside twice and we watched that person operate their life for a couple of weeks, we would learn a lot about who we are and what we're all about. And this is why people are talking about meditation and prayer so much right now, because they both have the ability to do a couple of really valuable things. But one of them is we connect with who we are, and we figure out what we need and how we want to do things and what life we want, what we're willing to tolerate, what concessions we're willing to make. And if you're just going all of the time, and I only speak from experience, when I was moving 24/7, I
Mhm.
didn't have a chance to check in.
Yeah.
And then to kind of bring us back full circle where we started, that's when the shingles showed up. That's when the first panic attack started showing up. That's when the second panic attack, and that's when the third and final one hit. And it's at that point that you go, all right, it's time to do something. And then do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do it. Like, let's go.
So if you had your 12-year-old golfer, some of your hockey players, your doctor that you're coaching for a podcast, they're all in the same room with you, and you had 5 minutes to give them some type of message, what would that message be?
Can I tell you what's really coming through me right now?
You please do.
I would tell them this story. I would say, growing up, I had a really tough relationship with my mom. And we spent a lot of years not getting along with each other. I felt there were a lot of times where she disrespected me, and there were several times where I disrespected her. And over the years, that just was our relationship for a long time. And when my dad died, I got even more mad at her, and I got even more angry with her. And I started to make it really challenging for her to even be in relationship with me. And if I'm being honest with you and everybody else, I I didn't try very hard. I just really wanted to disconnect. I was an adult now, and I just wanted to be doing my own thing, and I didn't want to look back, and I just didn't want to have the baggage of all the bullshit. And when I was in my retreat a few years ago, the major theme that came up, and the reason that I was so stuck, and the reason that I was having such a difficult time was really at the end of the day because of the relationship that I had with my mom. And that very challenging relationship, boy, did it weigh on me in a million different ways that I never even thought it would or considered that it would, or maybe even acknowledged that it would. And when I got out of my retreat, I called my mom up as the transitional character that I talk about. And I said, Mom, I think we need to have a conversation and we need to figure out this relationship of ours because it's not working for me, and I don't think it's working for you, right? Like I always say to people, if you're feeling it, there's a pretty good chance they're feeling it too, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so we went on to have this really beautiful talk about her childhood and all the horrible things that she experienced along the way and why she just always found, our relationship challenging. And if I'm being honest with you, Anna Maria, it's probably one of the most important, meaningful conversations that I've ever had with anybody, let alone my mom in my entire life. And then what went on to happen from there was we spent the next few years really putting our relationship back on the tracks. And she really started to respect the things that I was into, and I respected what she was into. And I'm speaking about that specifically in a faith based perspective because we had different views about that piece of it. And so I started to repair that relationship with her, and it went from, like, all that hate and distrust and mean and all the ugly crap that came along with it to, like, calling her every Sunday to find out what they were talking about at church, and then having a dialogue with her about those moments, and it became to the it got to this point with my mom where I was actually excited when I saw her name pop up on my phone. Like, I can't tell you how many times her name would show up on my cell phone, and I would send it straight to voicemail. And I got to a point where I was really, really excited to see her name. And I got to a point where when things would happen in my life or my kids' lives or my wife's life, like I really wanted to share it with her. She was one of the first people that I wanted to share that whole, like any bit of good news with. And about a year and a half ago, she got into a really bad car accident. She hit her head and she died 3 weeks later.
Mm.
And I cannot even imagine my life if I hadn't gone to work on the relationship that I had with my mom. I can't imagine what feelings I would have right now. And so, what I'm saying to the guy I'm coaching in the podcast team and all the kids that I'm coaching, and to you, Anna Marie, and everybody that's listening, is I'm sure there's a relationship in your life that you don't like. And I'm sure it's one that causes you a lot of trouble and a lot of stress and a lot of difficulty. But maybe you could lay down your sword long enough to find some common ground and see if there's a way for you to get back to this point where when their number shows up on your phone, you're excited to talk to them.
Mm.
I believe it's possible because I did it myself. And I can tell you how much freer it is feeling that. So that's what was coming through me when you asked that question. And I felt like that was a nice way to wrap this up.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's
Mm,
I think we can all I mean, I know I can relate to that. We can all relate to it. And I think I love how you said lay your sword down because it's that sword, it's that ego that gets in all of our ways and it's costing us something, and it's costing us happiness, it's costing us all the things, but it's also I realized in some of my relationships that I had worked on, it was the need to be right,
mhm.
right? Because we only repeat behavior that we were getting something from. So if you're allowing your ego or your sword to take you on your way, then you're most likely just allowing that to let you be right and all of that. And so when you put that aside, you let go of the need to be right and then you open up the need to be loved, I think. And I think that
Well, listen, both things can be true, right? Like you can have that sword up because you're angry, because that relationship has let you down, because it's made you feel a certain way, and you kind of want to fight about it, right? I understand that, but again, to get back to what I'm talking about with effective communication, if you really want to have a conversation that moves the needle, that gets you to a better place, then you have to be honest. And honesty in the relationship that I had with my mom was, I really love you. You're my mom. Like, I wanna see your number show up on my phone, and I wanna be happy about it. I wanna be able to call you and not feel this fucking rage inside of my chest that shows up from me from time to time. Like, that's honesty. That's what I wanted from her. I just wanted that connection. And yes, I was angry and I had feelings and I had emotions and I had things I wanted to say. But none of those things were going to get me to where I eventually got to. And I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, Matthew, thank you so much for joining me today. And
I enjoyed it so much.
oh, so good. And if you could share with everyone, where can they connect with you and
I
continue?
believe, yeah, for sure. Just head on over to MathewBlades.com. That's my website with one T, MathewBlades. And you can find everything I'm about right there.
Love it. All right. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And just a quick note to all the people that get to work with you and get to experience you in podcasting. I interview people every single day of my life on podcasts, and I can tell you, I've had Dr. Anna Marie on my podcast. She was fantastic. You're a wonderful person. You're very respectful. Thoughtful with the things that you say, with how you live your life, and so I appreciate you just for being one of the real ones out there.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.